it's your boy Young Love. I give him that time. Pancho leg stay the punchy America. Panye dollar, Pancho leg stay the punchy America. Panye dollar, walk on your leg, Kankaro, what on a watching. Oga level leg, gear, power, leg. Panda with ya, punchy America. Panye dollar, no, chingatongo pandon, could you ever buy a check out? Papu panda, gear, what ya be dollar venting. Stay the punchy America, Panye dollar, Pancho leg stay the punchy America, Panye dollar, walk on your leg, Kankaro, what on a watching, Oga level leg, gear, power, leg, Panda with ya, punchy America, Panye dollar, no, chingatongo pandon, could you ever buy a check out, Papu panda gear, what ya be, dollar venting.
Thank you so much, Lagos State Media team. To our viewers, welcome to Lagos State Media Beyond Boundaries, wherever you are tuning in. At this hour, we have in the studio our usual guests, and it has been quite long before we have conversation again. And we are happy to host him at this time, Mr. Edmund Yakani, one of the prominent activists who is always at the front line when it comes to the affairs of the country across 3 regions. Mr. Edmund Yakani, we are happy to host you today. And to our viewers, kindly, I ask you to share this live show on your Facebook wall so that your friends may get to hear from Edmund Yakani. And our conversation or discussions will focus much on peace talk between Twic and Ngok and Twic of Warab State. As all of us are aware, the conflict between the two, especially earlier of this year up to now. And Edmund Yakani is here to give us more details on what is happening and how far they have gone with the peace talk. And afterward, we will also touch things to do with the issue of Abiy Protocol, of which President Kiir has sent delegation to Sudan headed by Security Advisor Honorable Tut Galwak to Khartoum. And we will also touch a bit in regard to the burning down of churches in Gokrial by one of MPs and lawmaker in our nation. Mr. Edmund will also tell us their perspective as activists. What is their stand in regard to such an ethical behavior being showcased by those who are supposed to be law makers in our country. With those few remarks, let's dive into our conversation by welcoming our guest, Mr. Edmund Yakani. Kindly give us your opening remark before we go into our conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you for hosting me. And after a long time, as you said, where we have no chance to talk, and we are almost our last stage was talk about the floods, but now I was caught up with other few things. I'd like to say first, thanks for Lex Media for hosting me, and also thanks for those who are listening to this particular conversation, whether directly through Lex Media or through other social media platform. We are at a crossroad stage where our country requires us to stand up as a nationalist for the best interest of the nation, because we have a lot of emerging shocks that are affecting our population, being it the deadly communal violence that we have seen recently happening between the Twic and the Ngok Dinka, and the tension that is almost renewing itself in Western Equatorial State. And we have the question of the status of ABA between Sudan and South Sudan. And all these are in the face of the floods, where we have almost lost millions of population being displaced due to the floods, and the floods are really back becoming a disaster. And the floods is denying generations to come to miss their schools, lack of health services in some communities. And we have seen waterborne diseases coming up, snake bites, and we have population that are really in dire of need of support, and there's nobody supporting them. The little that we have seen from the government, it is reaching out, but still also we have corrupt hands going around the little the government is providing. So I think it's a time of us to really face the nation as a nationalist. If we really intend to fight for an independent state of South Sudan, it's a time for us to stand up as a nationalist, and we help every part of South Sudan without any form of discrimination. Whatever the case is a time for you to show to the nation what you want to give the nation before you ask what the nation should give you. As praise spoken before by one of the US President F. Kennedy, is that before you ask the nation, what have you done for the nation? So this is my take, is that our country is facing challenge, our citizens are facing challenge, but we're trying with the little efforts and the energy we have to make sure that at least we rescue our citizens and rescue our country from unfolding, and to become a stock of laughter for the friends that by then stood with us to liberate ourselves from the rest of Sudan. So I think it's a collective responsibility. One person can't do it. We need all to do it, but we can't succeed in doing a successful work to build the nation in the state of South Sudan we want if we don't change our political attitudes from attitudes being centered towards fueling violence and escaping with the public money, running with it away to outside world and use it there. So I would like to say profiteers of violence and profiteers of corruption should be dealt with in our country, because time has come for us to stand up as South Sudanese for the South Sudan that we want. So this will be my opening remarks.
Thank you so much, Edmund Yakani, for that genuine call to all South Sudanese. South Sudan needs our collective efforts in order to reduce the level of challenges we are facing currently as a nation. Thank you for that call. Mr. Edmund, we are aware most of South Sudanese on social media, in diaspora, and even in back at home. The issue of Dinka Ngok and Twic has been persistently going on for the last more than 7 months now. And all citizens are trying as much as they can to make sure they also manifest what is happening on the ground, especially those who are here in diaspora. Kindly, can you tell us or brief the public? Lake State Media is aware you are one of the members or one of the delegation who is directly engaging the two communities to come together and coexist as they used to be several years ago. Kindly, can you tell us how are you moving on with the process, and how have you gone so far, and what have you done, and what are the syndromes that give people hope these two communities will come together like they used to be before? Thank you, Edmund.
Thank you very much. If you ask me to describe the root cause of the ongoing death violence between the Twic, Mayardit Dinka and the Ngok Dinka, if you ask me to describe in one sentence, I will say the Twic, Mayardit and Ngok Dinka deadly violence is a product of political elites manifestation. Elites manufactured it, they bring it to the communities and they throw it. And one of their entry point to make that violence happen and to become more deadly between the Twic, Mayardit, and the Ngok Dinka is to invest on border issues. And one of the hotspots of the border issues is to use ANEF as a point of conviction and convincing the youth to take arms and to shoot at each other. And these are two communities that have left in history for a number of years without any violence that we have registered. To be honest with you, I've been looking at the literature. I like to do really research. I do a lot of literature. Even during the liberation days, I try to look into whether there's tensions among the leaders that come from Twic, Mayardit, and the Ngok Dinka during the struggle for the independence of Sudan. There's no history registered of violence. There are petty issues, but they're not at the scale that it leads to the level that the Twic looks at the Ngok as enemies. And there were incidents, there were cases possibly of intermarriages between these two communities. There are in-laws from all sides that could have played a bigger role to that. So of recent, it's a question of political elites. It's a question of people who lack an agenda for national engagement. So they start creating ANEF as a point of setting an agenda for national engagement, setting an agenda for relevancy, for political relevancy and influence. So it is a complete elites level. Why I say so? Personally, I've been closely monitoring and interacting and even going to the field, visiting to the field ground to understand exactly what is the issue that is coming up. This issue, it's a complete elites issue. If you go and talk to the communities and to sit on the ground, it's not a big issue. Yes, there are competitions over ownership of various borders in Sudan. It's not only between the Twic and the Ngok. It is all over the country. But why are those ones not deadly? Why is it deadly now between the Twic and the Ngok? Who are the triggers? So from both sides, there are people who lack political agenda. They're using that for their political motives. There are people who have no political relevance anymore. They want to gain political relevance and attention. They're using that. So I like to say, if you hear the history of peaceful coexistence between the Ngok and the Ngok Dinka, the Twic Dinka and the Ngok Dinka, if you hear the history of peaceful coexistence, products of that peaceful coexistence are now the spoilers of that peaceful coexistence. Because I try to look into names. Grandfathers build a very nice peaceful coexistence among these two communities. Now their grandsons are spoiling it simply because they need an attention like their grandfathers. They need political representation like their grandfathers. There are names that, if we hear on the ground, that they are involved in fueling violence from political level, from South Sudanese who have international reputation at the various international institutions from both sides, Ngok and Twic, from elites who are in Juba, who claim to be politicians, who are shouting that we are with the President Salva, and some of them are saying we are with the first vice president, are the same people digging holes for our people to die. They're in Juba, they're not very far. There's a few individuals who in social media, and the social media I've actually committed myself to track. I realized there's two guys, one is from Twic, one is from Ngok. One individual claimed to be 50 people. I don't know where he sits in a bar or he drinks, and then for him, he liked the blood of our people being ferried. Then he's sending negative messages. So all these, and there are people in uniform who are ferrying ammunitions. There are traders who claim to be traders, but on the exercise of saying they're shifting trading materials, they're shifting together with them ammunitions and guns. So all this culture, where does it come from? This culture comes from the tendency of people are competing for recognition, people are competing for political representation. And actually, in one of the exercises, I questioned myself, was it because now elections are determined to be in December 2024, some people are trying to create political relevance to be seen as a potential aspirants for electable position to represent the communities, and they're forwarding this violence so that this violence bring for them attention. So it's a really completely senseless war. And there are people who you feel in the social media, when you say, I'm going to handle issues of Twic, Mayardit, and Ngok Dinka, the first question they will ask you is, who owns ANEF? These are the people who have the poison. Whoever asks that question directly are the people who have the poison of the violence that is going on. Yes, we know there's a dispute over ownership of a place, but we can resolve it in a non-violent way. We can dialogue. These borders were not drawn by us. These borders are drawn by colonialists. And as being national, borders does not determine nation. Your nationality is not determined by the border between me and you. Yes, I'm from Central Equatoria, you are in Lakes, or you are in Yerol, I'm in Morobo. We're all South Sudanese. What's so-called Morobo, what's so-called Yei, what's so-called the mileage cannot determine our nationality. It is the land that we live in it peacefully. Yes, borders can be there as a contested areas, but we can't use armed struggle as a way, or armed violence as a way of resolving our grievances over ownership of a place or over a naming of a place. So that's, for me, I like to give it as a cost. So what we did? As a civil society, I try to engage civil society that comes from ABA and comes from Twic. So we have to do first a civil society reconciliation, that we need to build a sense of telling the community's leaders, telling the youth in the community, telling the political leaders that as a civil society, we are moving as a nationalist. So we have to have first a civil society from Ngok Denka and a civil society from Twic to agree on a formula of working together, not in a way that we are splitting, working together, and we lobby the two communities together. So that has been for a quite number period of time that the civil society have been trying our level best until we succeeded to have that joint position as a civil society from Twic and civil society from Ngok Denka coming together, from ABA coming together and putting a joint proposal for support. And what I use is that we immediately mobilize IOM, mobilize MUNISFA, mobilize UNIMIS, we mobilize Concordus International. And we ask them, like, look here, this issue needs to be resolved. And we mobilize actually even Bishop Gesho Relief Foundation. So these are actors that comes into it. Then the civil society start moving together in spotting completely less political minded community representatives, chiefs who are in the community 24/7, women, youth, and then other civil society organizations and religious leaders who are really 27, they're in the communities. When there's a gun shooting, it is there. When the airstrip is stopped, not to drop commercial commodities, they feel the pain. Not those of us who are in social media or who are in diaspora, or not those of us who are in Juba, we can eat meal and we make an action that deny our own communities not to have a meal because the airstrip can be closed and they don't have any supply of food. And this is in a sense that we are in our social media, we are in Juba, we are in diaspora, or wherever we are outside the flood impact. And these are the people that are facing the flood in face of them. They're struggling to manage floods, how to go about the issue of the floods, but we're sending to them poison. We're not sending to them any rescue. We like to see dead bodies of our youth from Ngok Denka and from Twic in the bushes, in the waters of the flood, rotting, like as if these are not South Sudanese, as if these are the enemies that marginalize and oppress us. So this is a result of those of us who claim to be elites, being political, being civil society, being academia, or being in diaspora, or being within the country, or wherever we are, or being people who we can term ourselves that we are socialized and civilized section of our communities. We're the one fueling that. So that is the tension. So as civil society, what we decided to do is that we brought them and we asked them, where do they need to be meeting together? Both this particular category from Ngok Denka, from ABA, and Twic Denka, from Twic Mayardit, say we need a neutral ground. And the neutral ground was wow. That's one thing. We don't want to be here because if we're here, there's a spoilers close to us here who are agents of those political leaders. So we need to wow. And as we need to wow, we need a neutral person to come in. So that's where I was invited as a mediator to the talks when we are in wow. So when we started day one, it is 3 days. It's a 3 days dialogue. And the dialogue rationale, what we decided as civil society, the dialogue rationale right now is focusing on stoppage of the ongoing deadly violence. That's number one principle. Principle number two, peaceful coexistence. Principle number three, anything to do with borders, it's the responsibility of the national government. But we must prepare a ground that create a conducive environment to prove the ownership of the boundaries where we don't lose lives and we don't lose our livelihood But we see those who are after interest in the borders to have the space. So those are the three principles that we designed the dialogue in WOW. So the dialogue in the beginning was hot. Why was hot? As a mediator, a South Sudanese. And then, there's these behaviors of South Sudanese who believe that after the war of 21 years, still you can use your national language to hide secrets. So they saw me, I'm Monjur, so they start using Tongmojang in some of the communication. Without knowing that some of the Tongmojang phrases, I've interacted with colleagues, with the friends who are from Monjang, I already start learning Tongmojang. And even these days, it's there's a books, you can start Tongmojang. So funds start coming from Juba, from Wara, from Abyei. People who are spoilers, they start making calls. And of course, as a little Tongmojang that I know, I start interacting. I say, when they call, I ask, I say, who called you? What did he tell you? Was he telling you that you build a poison here, take it back home? So some of them get scared because there was a pressure from the elites, diaspora, from Juba. Even some of them are in WOW. They waited during the lunchtime. They come with their own lunch to feed them. It was tense. We reached to the level now in the beginning, none of them want to eat hotel food. Yes, as a South Sudanese tradition, whether within the Dinka community or the non-Dinka community, within the Nuer or within, always as Africans, if we fight with you, before we sort out the factors that made us fight, we can't share the same meal because we see each other as enemies. Because in African culture, we believe there must be a performance of rituals that cover the blood of those who have lost because of our fight. That's a common thing that, for me, is not a big problem. Some people want to amplify it as a problem that why they can't eat in the same hotel, in this, why they are not drinking tea together, why they share lunch different, why do you pay them cash money for lunch? I say it's a tradition everywhere. If we fight with you, we can't share the same meal in the same dish until we are reconciled, until we reach consensus and rituals is performed to wash the blood of those who have lost, so we'll be in safe side. That's a normal thing. So, but it was tense the first day. Why was it tense? As say, influence of the phone calls that are coming from the elites. Some of them, as I said, are in WOW. Even I will tell you, I have caught evidence of some people who bought the plane from Juba and rushed to WOW in order just to spoil that. Imagine, you waste $110. That if you put that $110 in a basket of people who are suffering from the floods, you could have changed a life of a child who is almost dying because of mosquitoes or snake bites. That $100 is a big value to rescue maybe lives of people. Instead of wasting it buying with a ticket from Juba, flying to WOW to add more fuel for no consensus for the dialogue. I have evidence of that. People are telling me on the third day, have you seen that person that was sent by so-and-so from Juba to come and spoil us? Have you seen this person who come here and meet with us here? He's telling us not to agree. So have you seen this person? He brought the resolutions which have developed somewhere. So these are the evidence that I've seen as a mediator on the ground. So what does it tell us? It tells you completely the violence that our communities are facing are not their own making, are the making of those of us who are socialized and who are elites. It is us who manufactured and throw it down there. And then there are people who are playing in changing history. By the way, there are a lot of change of history about, specifically if you look at the peaceful coexistence between the Twic, Mayardit, and the Ngok Dinka, there are facts there that some people want to manipulate those facts for their own gain. And I will tell you, there's similarities between the tension of Twic, Mayardit Dinka, and the Ngok Dinka, and the tension of Balanda and Zande in terms of ownership of land, manipulation of history, manipulation of facts. And the people who have reached these days start creating manipulation of facts about land ownership and community existence. And remember, one of the things that I remind them, I say, in our history, we have human movement. That human movement, one of the principles is that accommodation is a human value. When somebody comes to you, you accommodate. You don't fight the person. And through accommodation, the human movement, settlements takes place. Like I can tell you completely, I have evidence that I have people who migrated from Kakwa. Some of them are settled in Iron. They're not completely Kakwa. They're real Tongmojang completely. They're Monyiron. They speak pure Tongmojang there. But in history, people say it's movement of human beings, which we couldn't have used that as a tool to change history of ownership. That's something that we need to take into account. And some people start manipulating that from both communities, the individual manipulated history. And that is one of the hardcore issues that if we don't build sense and we don't build political attitudes of stopping these behaviors of manipulating historical facts for whatever gain that I don't know what the people want behind it, whether it's for political gain or for what, it is one of the hardcore issues. And this is the issue that made a declaration of the state of hostility between the Twic Dinka and the Ngok Dinka couldn't be easy, because it has link with the history of the Twic, it has link with the history of the Ngok Dinka. And this has made it very tough, very hard, honestly, for us to reach consensus between the Twic and the Ngok Dinka in terms of the dialogue that we've been working on. But at least I managed to reach a level that the communities have agreed to the level of saying, from today, no more violence. So if we are to move to resolutions based on this context, 3 days discussion, these are the outcomes. So maybe some of your audience may need to raise questions in terms of narratives, in terms of the context. I don't waste a lot of time there. Let's move to the resolutions. 9 resolutions were adopted from that discussion. Resolution number 1, immediate stoppage of the deadly fighting. And the chiefs, which you have seen in the image, one chief in uniform and one in not in uniform, holding the agreement. These two have said immediately they're going to make a phone calls. And they made the phone calls in front of us, calling the other chiefs that we have reached here. Nobody should be exactly these two. They have agreed. We're going to call back the youth. No more fighting. And you can see behind them, women are standing and clapping hands because they're always victims of the violence. So that's one resolution number 1, that the war is going to be stopped. Yes, there may be people in Juba, there may be people somewhere who might have by now sending bullets and ammunition to the communities. They need to hear this message. And if they're struggling to do that, it's a curse that they're imposing on their community. That's resolution number 1. Resolution number 2, based on this image that right now we can see, the young people that comes on the dialogue, they say one of the immediate responsibility is to stop the hostile propaganda and the hate speech. So the youth who came from the civil society and from the media and from the elites who are at the middle age, at the youth age, have agreed that the hate speech and the hostile propaganda social media must be stopped immediately. That's the second resolution that they have reached to. The third resolution, they have called for an immediate inclusive dialogue that bring the political leadership in ABA and the political leadership in Warap, and particularly from Twic, to sit down and to immediately officially declare a state of cessation of hostility, building on what they have already agreed that they're going to stop the violence. That's the fourth one they have called for. And they have called on both communities, fighters, being the youth from Ngok or Twic, that humanitarian workers should be allowed to move without any restriction, because our communities are facing floods. And by then, when we're doing these things, MUNISFA and the humanitarian agencies are communicating to me that they had a problem of movement. For example, we have instruments that we could have used for drilling boreholes. Either they're caught up in the Ngok land, they can't be crossed because priority is now with the Twic. The Ngok say, no, they can't move, or they're in the Twic, they need to be moved to the Ngok side, the Twic say, no, don't move them. So humanitarians find access as a problem. And humanitarian workers are denied because either you are a humanitarian workers, your NGO is working in the Twic land and you're from ABA, your life at risk, or you are from Twic and you're working in the Ngok Dinka, your life at risk. So they want to see that humanitarian workers as South Sudanese, they should do, and any humanitarian worker, regardless of the identity, they should not be interfered with. That's the fourth. The fifth resolution they have called is that they want to make sure that the political elites distance themselves from fueling violence. Number 6, they have called immediately to make sure that the humanitarian assistance is delivered. So 8 and the 9th is building much more around really demanding the national government and the state government and the ABA administrative areas to put attention towards the resolution of conflict between the Twic Dinka and the Ngok Dinka. So those are the resolutions of the reconciliation that happened in WOW. So those resolutions which happened that in WOW, and that has led to a bit of an agreement that have been reached. So that is for me a breakthrough. That's a breakthrough that I have seen it between the Twic Dinka and the Ngok Dinka that has happened in WOW, where I'm a mediator. And the outcome is that in the 1 week time, me personally, I'm going to tour the communities. I'm going to go to the Twic communities, I'm going to go to the Ngok communities, and we're going to move with the civil society jointly. A joint civil society from Twic and the Ngok, we all move together, plus the religious leaders, to disseminate the outcome of this, because we feel that if the community take the ownership, the chances of the elites who are either based in Abyei town or in Warab town or in Juba or in diaspora within the region or outside the continent will never have impact in pushing the youth again to go for fighting, or those who are in uniform in various uniform institutions. So that is the thing that we need to push. And of course, one of the things that I've like to make it very clear that as a civil society, time has come for us to name and shame those who are fueling it. We are not going to compromise. We're not going to compromise. Those who are behind the fuel, we will produce names that will have evidence. And it's good that at a community level, it's easy to cut up evidence. Imagine people claim that they're taking mattresses to the communities while these mattresses are filled full of bullets. People fill bullets into mattress and then they roll up as a mattress. So that when security want to inspect, they can't get it. People are fueling that we're taking sacks of wheat flour, and inside the sacks of wheat flour, there are bullets. Imagine we have reached to the what level that we start using food to cover evil acts, taking ammunition to our communities. So I think this time now, it's not a simple case. We're going to go for it, and we're not going to leave these political elites to force our community to kill themselves. And unfortunately, as I repeat myself, in the face of the floods, that people are buying tickets to fly from one place to another to fuel violence, instead of using that money to rescue lives of people who are suffering from the floods, people with disability, children, women who are lactating, and sick people. We couldn't put money to rescue them, but we can put money to fuel violence for action that leads to falling of violence. So I think that's what I'd like to bring to your attention, and I hope that this message is well received. And I hope those who are spoilers, I know they will get it as a bitter message, but the truth is always bitter. But it's a time for us to really, really change our attitudes and ensure that Ngok Dinka and Twic Dinka are peacefully coexisting, like as we have seen in history over 30 or 40 years. And the issue of manipulating history should be stopped. Otherwise, it's very hard to reach to a consensus if we want to manipulate history around facts that what really exists in life and in history. Thank you very much. Let's move, and I will take the other topics later.
Thank you, Edmund Yakani. It's very unfortunate indeed for the society to reach to that level, and the people behind it are those whom their primitive societies perceive to be the privileged educated one and perceived to be their leaders. It's so sad indeed, and it is sometimes so complex and dynamic when politics is mixed with social issues. And I think that is what is happening in Abyei, not only in Abyei and Twic, is happening across the country, in Western Equatoria, in Upper Nile region, and the same region, that's Barakazal. It's so sad. To make something clear from you, Edmund, you stated that there are some of political elites whom your initiative or your delegation find out to be the people behind this fighting over the land issue. Are you telling us that the political class are directly competing over the land issue and using the youth in order to appeal to their respective communities as their son who mind much about them? Or you are saying these people want to advance their interest for the leadership of the country to recognize them and maybe reward them with the positions in order to calm the situation? Does this look like a question of political greed, or does it look like a question of being loyal to your society? Can you make that clear to the public? Thank you.
Thank you. It's a mix of both. It's a mix of both. One, let me be very clear, straightforward. Let me use simple language. Some of these political elites are close friends of the president, and president cannot discipline them because they are his close allies. They're using that violence to show political recognition that comes from the communities. At the same time, they're using that as a complete greed political attitudes towards control of territory, which is completely meaningless and useless and have no any objective, except it's a curse to our own citizens from Twic Dinka and then the Ngok Dinka. That's one. The second group is that there's a power brokers, political power brokers, who want to be appointed into political seats at various levels of the governments, whether at a BA level or at a Warab level or at Juba level or at national level. So they use that violence to have an attention drawn towards them and to use the violence as a ladder of accessing people who have appointing authority and saying, you know, if you appoint me, I'll make that situation different. If I'm the one to be there, I'll find a solution to this problem. You see? And the same people are the same people who went and tell the president, you know why these people are doing this? Because they're looking at your chair. So it is a mix of a political class, completely what is happening between the Twic Mayardit and the Ngok Dinka. It is a complete mess of a political class. I will never blame the massive population of Ngok Dinka and Twic Dinka who are 27 in the community. It is these political class who are manipulating, even those who manipulate the history. Even those who manipulate the history. It's a political class who manipulate the interpretation and the narrative around the facts of the history. So they want to manipulate it, they want to rename it, they want to show, you know, administration, and they want to create certain facts that does not really favor consensus. It's more of we must be bully and dominant and we must take it over and we must show them who we are and they must acknowledge who we are, or otherwise we teach them a lesson they'll never forget. The other said, okay, since you want to teach us a lesson that we'll never forget, also we'll teach you a lesson that we'll never forget. What do you end up? You end up clashing. So all this is the manufacturing, and then it's a game of a political manipulation by the political class. And when I say political class, even some traders, I know some traders who are in Juba, who claim to be traders in Juba, traders in Wau, traders in Warab, they're for this thing. They're behind the violence, not only political elites. There are some academias who are also behind this, who keep on writings, who keep on doing what, who keep on manipulating history, who keep on sending messages through youth in social media. So we must stick to the facts. As I said, the similarity between the debate of Balanda and Zande over Tombra is the same similarity with the debate around the Twic Dinka and the Ngok Dinka over Anet. Is it simply because it's becoming a commercial town, we're competing over those taxes? Or what is it exactly? What assumptions do we have? And there are some assumptions which are assumptions of people who have never gone to school on the ground. But these assumptions are amplified by people who have gone to school, who are university graduates. The amplifying assumption of primitive people. For example, what assumption? Some are saying, oh, you know, we need to change the borders because Abiy is going to go to Sudan. Who told you Abiy is going to go to Sudan? What evidence do you have that Abiy is going to go to Sudan? Then when Abiy goes to Sudan, we're going to demarcate the borders. We're going to lose land. We better push them away. But this population of Abiy are completely solid, 100% lost life for the independence of the state called South Sudan. You see. So people are trying to create certain narratives that does not make sense completely, except is a narrative of a curse, is a narrative of taking away the lives of our potential generation youth who will be the potential leaders for our country at the various sectors. We force them to fight. Look at now, schools have closed. And the shameful thing is that in the face of the floods, none of these political class wanted that. So for me, and unfortunately, I would like to say that honestly, if one day we are going to name, we'll name people that you not believe. These are the people who are clapping hands that they support the system. For me, I was telling somebody, I say, look here, these people are digging a hole for the person they say they support. These people who say we support the president, we're behind the president, they're digging a hole for the president. And of course, whether the leadership of Juba like it or don't like it, the atrocities committed there will be accounted to the leadership. It's not accounted for those who manipulate, who generated the violence. So Juba leadership will take the responsibility. And that's why you see when there's an attempt of a committee sent, the committee was disputed. Why? Because even within the community, there are people who are questionable about, people are behind the tension of that, what led to the violence. So for me, that's really the bigger issue of the Twic Dinka and the Ngok Dinka. And my appeal is, it's a time for us not to use violence for resolving our political grievances. And there's no society that have lived without any grievance among themselves. Even husband and wife, when they're calling themselves, they use the word, I love you, you are my sweetheart. After the wedding in the church, this sweetheart will one day result to slaps. Have they bought guns? Have they bought AK-47? It's only stupid partners who may use knife or guns to kill themselves. But a real partners, you have to sit down and dialogue. That's how life is. So it's the same thing between the issue of Ngok Dinka and Twic. Let's sit down, let's dialogue, while we peacefully coexist. Misunderstanding comes always there, but the best way is not to use violence. So for me, it's a complete blame for political elites of both communities. And they have the power to stop the violence and bring back the culture of peaceful coexistence.
Yeah, thank you, Edmund, for that. It is very sad indeed that the political greed manifestation is leading our society into the dark end of the path. Is sad. But before we move to the questions of viewers, I'm aware that some of the viewers pose some of the questions which they really look forward for you to answer them. I really need you to let public know whether do you have knowledge or did you had an access to the reports which the report of the delegation which was led by the Vice President Hossein Zalabagi to mediate this issue, because people are questioning themselves, and that is why many people unanimously may agree with you that this conflict is being filled up by political class. Otherwise, people were not expecting the conflict to continue, even when the president himself delegated one of his vice presidents to attend to that issue. So kindly, can you make it clear? Have you ever heard about about that report or not?
I have accessed the report. I've accessed the report. I have read the report to inform my engagement with the civil society and to inform my mediation. I've looked at that report. To also access reports that are written by peacekeeping mission, like UNMISS, like MONUSFA on this particular issue. I've accessed them. I have accessed videos and audios of political elites that release statements prior to these crises. I have accessed articles written by sons and daughters of Twic and Ngok and academia in various media platforms. I all access those materials because I don't want to go to engage in this process while I'm not informed. Secondly, I have accessed materials from the churches about history of the Twic and the Ngok Dinka in the sense of missionaries movement. I've accessed those information. I have accessed narratives from Khartoum, which was written during the colonial time and the manipulation of exactly what's going on in South Sudan. I have accessed quite a number of materials. I will tell you in terms of materials I have read over 25 different materials to simply give me a knowledge to understand what is the relationship between the Twic Dinka and the Ngok Dinka in history and how does it devolve that leads to violence now. And that's what I'm saying, over 30 to 40 years, there's no case of deadly incidents. It's just now. In the past, there are small incidences, but the chief sorted out. It does not need any presidential decree that time. But why now the issue of Twic and Ngok Dinka needs presidential decree? Now, when I read those reports, this is the facts that I find from the reports. If you read the reports that begin about Twic and Ngok Dinka peaceful coexistence, report that begins from 2005, and you go backwards, those reports, there's no manipulation of history, there's no change of facts. And there are some books which were written recently with the maps that even contradict some tech of some few individuals about the question of boundaries, the question of land ownership. The map speaks something different and the narrative says something different. But it is started of latest. Actually, my findings is that it started from 2019 or 2018. From 2018, manipulations start coming. So this violence going on is not something of last week or 2 weeks. It's something that has been building up through political elites write-ups, through political elite challenges in social gatherings, because some of the testimonies I'm getting from the community that there's this particular politician who say in this particular event, there's this particular message sent by so-and-so to this group. So this start manipulating. The manifesto started from that time. And it's completely a culture of political greed. So I look at those reports, and the report of the His Excellency Vice President, with due respect and honor, it has some few weaknesses. It has some few central and essential and critical weaknesses. And this might have led to the tension that neutrality and objectivity of the committee have lost because of those small mistakes. I don't call them mistakes that are sort of like imposed, but it's a technical mistake of the committee in terms of maintaining principle of neutrality, objectivity. And that's why people are disputing that, no, we don't want to listen to them, we don't want to go for them because there's already a preconceived decisions on the content of the report. And that comes from a very technical background about the culture of mediation and negotiation, and specifically when it becomes resource-based, because land is a resource. You need to really be very sensitive. And that's why even when I was taking the responsibility to mediate, I want to make sure that resource disputes are not subject for a particular group to decide. It's subject for open, more broader dialogue so that people reach consensus. But some few individuals want to use write-ups of narratives to start changing history with interest of resource control and political expansion, of political influence expansion. And that's the problem in the report that I have seen. And that's why the recommendation of the report itself, it becomes a problem. And remember, this report have named people. And I've not named strangers. It have never named strangers. I've named very prominent leaders whom are too close to the president. These are like you are taken to what you call a final heavyweight boxing ring, you know, that heavyweight boxing ring. So the small ones, you can't go there. Those are the heavy boxers. So for you to go for that heavy boxing, it yourself, you start judging yourself whether I have the weight to win or the weight to contest or to challenge. So heavyweights are mentioned. And not simple heavyweights, historical heavyweights in the history of South Sudan, when mentioned in that report. So for me, our political leaders need to take political responsibility to accept the facts that they messed up, and because they messed up, they should hand over before violence take over them from power. Because, you know, if you don't hand over, violence will be taken away from power. And it's a history we've seen. Where is Bashir? Where is the rest? Where is Gaddafi? Violence once, you better behave like Uhuru in Kenya. When time comes, you say, guys, my time have come. Here, next generation go. You are hustlers, you are whatever, struggle. But my time at end. So they better end their term in politics in a peaceful manner rather than using violence, because that violence will turn against them. It will take them out of the influence they are in. It will reduce all their legacy to nothing. So for me, I've read that report. I have that access to report. So I'm informed with those reports in terms of its content. And I've read it thoroughly. And plus others that I've said, other more 24 materials. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Edmund, for that. The only thing that the public might request you to do for them is by the time of successful ending of your mediation is to publish the name of these people, because sometimes people always say mention the devil so that the devil will be ashamed. So some of them, to be honest, are not doing justice to their president. And when you hear them in sexual gathering, speaking, you may even think these people love president. But when you go deeply to interrogate their activities on daily basis, you realize these people, they don't even love president. They are even trying as much as possible to make sure the name and the history of the president must have a certain black dot indicate in the history that this thing and this thing happened during President Kiir regime in South Sudan. Like what is happening now, burning of churches, that has already gone to the book of history. Burning people alive, fire squatting them. All these things have already gone into the book of history But none of these people that are doing them will be mentioned at the front pages of the books. It will be President Kiir that will be recorded. Their names will come as the second who have done such inhuman act during President Kiir regime. Kindly let's move to the section of the comment section to see the questions that have been asked by the viewers, and you'll answer them quickly before we move forward. Yeah, there is one question here. Thanks for the discussion. Before Yakani went further, can you tell us what are the indigenous, who are the indigenous community of the current disputed land between Dinka Ngok and Twic Mayadit? That's one question from Vincent. The second question, which administration will be responsible for South Kir River between Abyei and Warab State? Which is the main problems from UL Deng? The next, from Abyei, what is the next step? I guess those are we have another question, the fourth one. My question is, how will you convince those in Clubhouse to stop hate speech and let the peace continue? I get this person, Mawien, might be having knowledge about Clubhouse warriors in regard to the issue of Dinka Ngok and Twic Mayadit. Thank you for that. Our technicians, Abraham Adit. Those are 4 questions, Mr. Edmund. The first question is, whom do you believe to be the indigenous people or community of a net between Ngok and Twic Mayadit? The second question is about the South River, which is supposed to be the problem now, or which is actually perceived to be the issue or disputed issue, disputed place. The second one is after Abyei, which or what is the next step? And then the fourth one is your last message to the Facebook or social media warriors, including Clubhouse. Thank you, Edmund. Thereafter, we'll move to the comments and your position in regard to the issue of the church, which was banned yesterday by Tuan in Gorial. Thank you.
Thank you very much. In terms of the question around indigenous owners of the land and who will be responsible for the administration in Southern Kir River, this is my answer. This is actually the actual center of the tension that led to the violence between the Twic Dinka and the Ngok Dinka. This issue came up during my mediation, and this issue was very clear in the report also of the investigation. And this issue have a huge political silence from the center in Juba about resolving it. My answer is that we have human movement history. If I'm asked to provide an answer to this question from my perspective as Edmund, which in my mediation, I didn't put attention towards much because I knew it's a historical issue, a resource issue. This issue requires us to go to the ground. We can't negotiate it from wow. And we can't negotiate it with the people who are outside the actual history, the ancient history of the Twic and the Ngok peaceful coexistence. And it's one of the recommendations that in my mediation, I push that there's a need to have a broader inclusive dialogue. And this dialogue should be whole actual for me on the ground in Aneth, where we need to see justification of literature of the peaceful coexistence between these communities. Then we come and determine the ownership of Aneth or the indigenous, what is we term indigenous owners, or what we call in terms of Southern Kir River, who will be responsible as an administrator. Because a lot of this literature is very conflicting. If you sit with the Ngok Dinka alone, you have a conflicting narrative. You sit with the Twic alone, you have a conflicting narrative. You sit between Twic and the Ngok Dinka, you have a conflicting narrative. It depends on which generation you speak to. And if you go to literature, the literature that contradicts some of the more influential elites' interpretation of what exactly Aneth is. So my answer to these people who ask this question is that this particular question, it is the basket that holds the poison that leads to the deadly violence. We can't sort it with the barrel of gun. And we can't sort it by being radical. We sort out this question, we go back to history, and it's not an answer that you can find in one day engagement on 1 day or 3 days interpretation. It's a question of us going back to the ancestors. How do peaceful coexist? And I've involved in similar dispute like this. Let me give an example of not close there. I had a dispute over Kit1. Who owns Kit1? Is it Acholi? Is it Bare? Is it Lulubo? Is it the Mati? And that time when I was mediating this particular ownership of the land, and when I was handling this issue of Twic and the Ngok Denka, it reminded me of Kit1. And by then when I was handling that issue particularly, Clement Wanikonga was a governor of Central Equatorial State, back up with Alfred Ado Gore and Waniga, Bari, and from their side here, they have Lulubo behind them. And the other side, there you have Ojetok as a governor of Eastern Equatorial State. You have JJ Okot, who was the chief of staff behind him from the Acholi, and you have late Martin Kenyi from the Madi. From that side, they have Madi Acholi boundary issue brought to Kit1 here. You have Bari and Loban, Bari and Lulubo issue brought to the Kit1. But at the end of the day, when I push this issue, I come to realize it's a competition over a possible mining in Kit1. So people at least have to build alliances, but for them to do the mining, first land ownership have to come in. So I'm trying to use that example, that my humble request and answer and my humble appeal to everybody is that the question of Southern Kir River administration and the ownership of Aneth, it requires patience, it requires us to accept the truth of the narrative of the history, it requires us to be on the ground and balance the narrative without deciding it in our own perspective. Because there are written history that long in archives that I've read is disputing some history that was brought up. And I was asking somebody, I said, okay, now look here. This is what you say, but this is what I read in the books that are written before you are born. So which is which? And I feel that it will be a mistake for somebody to sit in a 3 days time saying, I would draw a conclusion on who are the indigenous without that particular participation of those historical owners, the grandfathers, whom you can't move them out of ABA or you can't move them out of Twic to come to WOW to participate. Because I'm dealing with who? I'm dealing with young generation that receive either an added salt history that is being manipulated, transferred to them, and they want to use it to justify. We need the elders to narrate to us. And as Africans, normally, our boundaries in terms of the narratives and the facts are owned by our elders. And that's why I would like to tell for those audience who are listening to me in this particular platform that I beg you, if you want to sort out if you want to find an actual answer to these particular questions, we better go down to the ground. Let us not assume. Let's listen to the elders. Let the elders tell us in history of what they know, how people coexist, and let us look at the narratives that is written, and from there, we zero consensus. Because it seems like there's a dispute of political, administrative, territorial competition. Like between Warap and Abia, people are fighting over political administration issue. And this is linked to a potential development of resources. And remember, I was reading history. This tension started right from a revenue point of view. The class started about who will control revenue, who collects where and who takes where from Abia and from Warap. And how do we divide? Do we split the revenue? Do we go? And the revenue becomes sweeter. The more revenue becomes sweeter, you start interfering with history. So for me, that's my answer. My answer that I don't want to make a mistake here to give you an answer. Then tomorrow you say, by quoting Edmund say, by his facts. My facts, I can't generate them in 3 days meeting in WOW. My facts will be sitting down with the elders for at least longer periods to listen to them as a neutral person based on the facts on the table that defeats any argument. Then we say this is the facts And this is the decision of the indigenous. Because let me tell you, right now you push it to be Ngok and Twic. Soon it's developed to a different thing. Let election comes. Even those who call themselves Ngok in unity, they will clash. Those who call themselves Twic, Mayar, will clash. It depends on which political color you affiliated to and interpretation. So for how long should we use this manipulation of history to amplify violence that claim lives of innocent people? So for me, that's my answer to the two questions about indigenous owners of the land and the administration of Southern Kir River. Be patient. We can sort it out through social media. We can sort it by listening for somebody who graduated with a degree, a PhD, and say, I'm the best, or by somebody who say, I have left Twic and I've left a BA, and now I'm in diaspora, and then, I'm the best. I know it because I know it. The history told us, and we are like this, and this is a way we need to. No way. History is with our elders who are on the ground, whom we can't move them to any meeting. And even sometimes they don't have language. The language is one, Tongmunjang, not the English that we're manipulating with the interpretation. So for me, that's the humble answer I will provide for those two colleagues who raised those two questions. That patience is needed. But as we're waiting for patience, let's not fuel violence as a determiner of ownership. That's wrong, because we're losing lives. That's my answer to that. What's the next step? Next step is actually, it is the answer to the first questions. The next step is an answer to the first questions, because the first question contains the factors that trigger the violence. So the next is that we need to start moving a real dialogue with the sense of tolerance, with the sense of maturity, with the sense of responsibility to discuss the debate of ownership of Aneth, and to look into facts of history and use facts of history to determine. Because before we decide on destiny of ABA, now we're deciding on destiny of Southern Kir River, Northern Kir River border, and Aneth. So we need to have another protocol. That also we need to go to Hague for trial to see whether Twic Dinka owns, and while we're here battling with Sudan over ABA. Like what? What political weaknesses are we having? Lack of political maturity. Lack of political maturity. This is just want to say. We have South Sudanese who have lost sense, who have lost political maturity, who doesn't know where is a national priority. Today, I cannot bring the border of my bomber and another bomber to become a national issue that I want to go buy an AK-47 manufactured in China to kill ourselves. While we have a big issue of ABA here waiting for us. We're facing that big issue. So let us look at priority where it is. And if you want political relevance and political legitimacy, never invest on this petty issue. This issue, we can sort them out. But also we can sort them out through a constructive dialogue, not with insults, not with threats, not with violence. So that's my answer. The next step, it's actual genuine, objective debate over Aneth with the proof of facts that history contained in the past and our elders, what they contain today. And I think we can find an amicable solution to that. The social media, the hate speech. I've reached to the level, personally, I engage a lot in social media tracking. Part of my work leads to an initiation of a project, which end up now as an NGO called Defile Hate Speech Now. Defile Hate Speech is a project that I ran and later on end up becoming an NGO that focus on hate speech. I realized that actually there are individuals who are completely evil in their thinking, and they want to utilize ethnicity as an instrument of having attention, of becoming assertive. And I think it's a sense of trauma. It's a sense of losing sense of maturity. Because, honestly, if we have gone to school, and maybe also this is a clear proof that the education system designed for us is not an education system that makes us realize humanity, but make us use the education to harm humanity. Because hate speech and hostile propaganda is an instrument of really harming humanity. I may disagree with you. You may disagree with me in ideology. That does not mean I should describe you as a cockroach. That does not mean I should insult you. That doesn't mean I should nickname you. Actually, it is healthy to have ideological disagreement so that we can build a better society of consensus, of rich thinking and rich ideology that we can push ourselves to where we are. But I've reached to the level that some South Sudanese becoming more regional, some becoming more ethnic, some become more tribal. And because of that, some have built a culture of undermining others and bullying others and imposing themselves on others to recognize that they are a culture. There is a growing culture among South Sudanese of applying animal farm theory live in South Sudan. This concept of all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. We have a section of South Sudanese that are applying that. There are some South Sudanese who admire and who feel proud and who feel happy when they marginalize others in their own area, when they bully others in their own area. And unfortunately, the designers of this strategy are those who claim that they're fighting the by then Sudan government over marginalization and oppression. Now, sometimes I start questioning, do we really liberate ourselves? Is our liberation an answer to concept of marginalization or oppression? Or some say, let's use liberation to marginalize and oppress others? Because I remember one time, I was attending a lecture of late Islamist scholar in Sudan, this Turabi, Hassan al-Turabi. Turabi one time saying in Arabic that the colonialists have left us, but they have left their house workers, their housekeepers, who now assume the role of the colonialists. They want to be colonialists. So the question is, I will disagree with you, regardless of your ethnic background, regardless of your identity. But that does not warrant me to really describe you as something that's not a human. For me to name you because of your ethnic identity. So for me, my message to this particular group is that hate speech has become hate speech, and hostile propaganda has become an instrument of reporting of UN. Honestly, some of us will joke. You see it very simple. Look at Rwanda. Who there will believe a single statement of a journalist will make that journalist go to the books of people who have used hate speech for amplifying violence? If the journalist is alive, he could have been one day facing trial, or he could have been sanctioned. So, and the disturbing thing is that our young generation, our age, which we could have challenged the elders before us by unity, actually was splitting our society with hate speech. I'll give you an example. I was recently fighting somebody. Yes, for me, I'm an activist. I'm a nationalist. I don't care of whatever you say. I will disagree with His Excellency President Salva in the way of his governance, as I see what he's doing is not nationalistic. I can disagree with Riek as a first vice president. I can disagree with Abdul Bagi. I can disagree with Wane Iga as a Equatorian. I can disagree with Tabandeng. I can disagree with anybody. I can disagree with the oppositions, as long as what I see they're doing is not making sense, that it is meeting a national interest. Somebody, when the alliance was built, they're coming together of the SOAs, with the meetings they're holding, with Twic, with the other thing. Somebody asking me, yes, but then you say you're an activist. Have you seen how now cockroaches are assembling themselves? I said, what about if tomorrow these people sign an agreement, they come and they face you and they ask you that you insult them cockroach? How do you feel it? With disclaimer, I remember one time Vice President Taban Deng say, Iraq is like a car that the tires have been removed. Arabia bigger mind to Lasate Carfofo. Now he's back as a first vice president. And he's vice president. How do you feel? You know, sometimes you amplify hate speech that create on you restriction of social interaction with somebody because the person you insulted. Tomorrow you find yourself your partners. You're nationalists. And you start remembering, you start having a self-restriction that even somebody does not feel about it. So hate speech have implications on you who generate this hate speech. The people amplify hate speech. One day they will say it. I remember in these 64 tribes, Somebody in Juba described me in a very nasty way. And one day we met ourselves in a place called Phoenicia. And he's a very good, very elite guy. And then somebody told me, do you know that guy? I say, yes. He said, that's a guy who described you like you don't care about other tribes, you only care about the Equatoria and all this. Say, the guy is there. Look at that guy. Go and greet him, and can you call him with his Facebook name? So I went. Because I want to prove myself. I shook the hand, the guy, I called the name. He said, hey, who told you? Then one of friends said, here is a guy you're insulting. Now you start apologizing, Edmund, I've been manipulated. I say now, if I've pistol here, I could have shot at you and you would have gone. But because I don't believe on that. So for me, let's stop hate speech, because it have implication on you who is using hate speech as a tool. So hate speech never help. Hate speech will scatter South Sudan, and hate speech will undermine us before the others. Others will laugh. We become a laughing stock when you use hate speech too much. So for me, time has come for us to accept the reality, and once we accept the reality, let the reality take its course. Let's not manipulate the reality, because manipulation of reality trigger a lot of things. So for me, that's my answer to those who are really so-called champions of hate speech and hostile propaganda.
Thank you, Edmund, for that powerful statement. That the education that we are receiving now is not a real education which was intended to serve humanity. It has lost its meaning, and it is now becoming a danger to humanity. You are right indeed, because South Sudanese, we are actually battling with the modernizations and our culture. We are trying to reconcile the two, and it is hard for us to reconcile them. And that's why it's very hard to hear a South Sudanese, especially from pastoralist communities, apologizing for the wrong things that he or she has done. People still have that ego that if you apologize, then it will show you as a weak person. And they don't know that once you apologize, it sends a clear sense of maturity about you. We are yet to learn those things. And that's why social media is becoming another ground of us pouring out hate speech and propaganda against each other. And such a statement, we are even yet to be aware that such statements are personal documentation. They will wait for us in the near future. It's very sad indeed, but hopefully you activists keep talking, and we social media outlet will keep bringing you on to talk to them. Few people will get to hear your words, others will not listen to them now, but they will realize them later on in the future. Before we close our show of today, Mr. Edmund, I need you to touch about the incident of Gokrial, where one of the lawmakers went majestically and burned down the entire church to zero. And not only that, it reached the extent of uncle or a brother beating up his sister and chop off the ear of that little girl simply because she is a believer of a certain church. And not only that, they even went to the media and said proudly that the lawmaker that have burned down the church, and if I hear anybody turning Seventh-day Adventist church, then if you are the son of this land, kill that person, and I will pay blood compensation of 31 cows. Surely, these are loyalists to the current regime. They're loyalists to J1. They're loyalists to President Kiir. Do you believe as activists, does these activities add any weight to the positive history of President Kiir, or are they reducting or subtracting rather the positive aspect which many people are about to remember President Kiir? Because of course he will leave power. Nobody is born to rule or to be president for life. Idi Amin of Uganda would have been president for life. There is time to exit the power and time to enter into power. kindly can you tell us and tell the public what are your position as activists of that country in such regard? Thank you, Edmund.
First, it is a constitutional violation. It is a human rights in terms of our Constitution, Article 23, Sub-Article 1 under the Bill of Rights on religious rights. The freedom of worship is under attack in that particular section. Religion is something that you can't punish by burning a church. Even if this church have a problem in terms of its presence in the land, you can't burn it. Because burning church as a Christian, regardless of the denomination of that Christianity, it has nothing like crucifying Jesus again to the cross, if it come from a religious background. So for me, it's really an act that is taken by a lawmaker who believes that they have the power of taking the law into his hands. So it's a clear demonstration of a lawmaker taking the law into his hands. Yes, he may have some grievances, as he mentioned, that he banned because traditional enshrines were banned by the church, and simply because the church, he described it as a center of prostitution. But that does not warrant for you to take the law into your hand and avoid following what is called due legal processes to find a legal response to your grievances against the church. Because the act of setting a fire on the building of the church by itself, it undermines the constitutional governance of the country. It undermines that completely. And this trend, it's becoming very clear around the generals of the SPLA who struggle for the liberation of this country. Like there's a mindset that we have liberated this country, and the people and even the opinion of how this country should be run is determined by the way we look at it. With due respect and honor, I respect Honorable Salva Matok. He is one of the MP in the parliament that I like, specifically when we had the debate on the dredging. He was one of the MP that is impressive, who came out boldly. And remember, he is one of the MPs who declare about the vehicles are bulletproof. What bulletproof is brought for dredging our rivers? What is the agenda? He is the only MP who stood up boldly. This time round, I don't know what happened with him to take the fire and set on the church. Yes, he may hold grievances that are genuine grievances, but these grievances could have been responded through a legal procedures. He is our former chief of staff. He knows what rule of law means. He is better by then our deputy minister of interior, who is in charge of imposing the rule of law. He is a renowned MP. He is a struggler. And remember, one of the objectives of us struggling is acceptance of our faith identity as Christians, regardless of the denominations. And in this war, 7 days have participated. There are 7 days believers who took a gun and fought. And today they liberated the country. When we were fighting for the independence, nobody attacked their faith. So whatever the case should be, the response that came towards responding to the personal grievance of Honorable Salva Matok against the church, that response is unconstitutional. It is a human rights violation, and it's a clear demonstration of political elites taking the law into their hands and telling the nation will decide to judge the case without any legal due process, because we believe what is called the due legal process. We own it, and we know how to define, and we know how to practice it. That's the message. Obviously, it is a bad history. It's a bad record against the current leadership. And honestly, wait. You come and see later on reports on international reports on freedom of worship. This will be the top heading. And remember, when you start attacking faith-based community in the global community, that's a grass-touch church built with the energy of the local community. And you have banned a church of specific denomination. This denomination is not a single person. It's not the pastor in charge that banned the shrines that represent that denomination. He is a single individual in that faith. But the burning of the church is an attack to the faith in that. You wait for the global response to that. You see
Thank you.
consequences that we will face it. So for me, that even this tendency of attitudes of somebody saying, you kill the person, I will pay a blood, or somebody chopping, this is complete extremism. This is a complete extremism, which is against the law. This is terrorism. There's nothing else. You're a terrorist. And this is not something that we have in our history. We can't kill ourselves with faith. So for me, it's a completely lack of socialization, lack of civilization, lack of respect for rule of law, lack of respect of human rights, undermining constitutional governance, and taking the law into your hand and defining the decision that are supposed to be made by court of law. You become the court of law and you decide and you ban. And honestly, all the positive records of Honorable is destroyed by burning that grass thatch house, which is made of bamboos. And maybe that particular church building is falling next month, and you set a fire to take a very bad credit on your back. And anyway, taking a fire as a leader, and remember, in African culture, a place of worship of your own community members, you set fire on it. It's a curse. So we hope for the best. I hope that the leadership can take responsibility and responding to that. Up to now, there's a silence. With the only people we have had who have issued a statement, it's the leadership of Warab State, which I appreciate. The Minister of Information have called for the followers of 7 Days Adventist to be patient. They are investigating the incident. And I hope it's not a political investigation. It's a genuine investigation. As like late Dr. Garang have said, that even the Kawajas, if you want to kill an issue, you form a committee to investigate. Because committee of investigation is actually killing the issue. We hope that it's not a political investigation to cover up the demand for justice and accountability. I think that issue requires justice and accountability to prevail for the sake of us respecting the faith of 7 Days Adventists as part of Christian community and Christian denominations.
Thank you, Edmund. You are right and true indeed. You may mock anything, but when you tamper to mock God, you'll bear the consequences. Burning that church, Honorable Salva will not realize it now, but give him next 5 years, he will realize his mistakes. Yeah, actually, we appreciate the Warab government for issuing the statement, but of course, it will be no different from any committee or investigation committee formed in J1 or anywhere else in South Sudan. They always ending up like formation has already been done, investigation is going on, but the findings are always unknown by the public. The incident of Unity State up to now, the investigation is still going on. And that was beyond our borders as the nation. And it is true indeed, the response from the international body that is directly linked to 7 Day Adventists will be heavy on the current regime. Although they will not feel it now, they will realize it later on. It's very unfortunate that we are even in crisis with a God. We thought we will be in crisis with ourselves and not to tamper with the God, despite the denomination, as you said earlier. Yeah, there is one question from the viewers. It will be displayed here and you will answer it before you issue your last statement. Good evening, or wherever time is, Majok Makur. I heard you talking about church that was burned to ashes by Honorable Sapamatok. Do you people know that the so-called 7 Day Adventists has devastated the meaning of God, fellowship, which church is mobilizing young stars to join them? Not only that, but moving them away from their families. Which church is saying that our girls should not be married? Which church says you shouldn't marry for your dead brother or relatives? Which need to analyze this situation critically. Thank you. That is the question, and it is not even a question. It's basically a remark and a comment from the person who is certified with the banning of such churches.
Yeah,
You will respond, Mr. Edmund, to that. What he is actually asking that our norms, if church interfere with them, then we have no option than to ban them or to kill those people who are heading that denomination. Of course, we have culture. And not only as South Sudanese, it is a specific tribe to marry a wife to your dead person or your dead brother. To be honest, could be only Dinka and Nuer. I don't think whether you have it in Equatoria, but you will mention it in your response. So in other societies across the world, we don't have such. Only in Dinka land and in Nuer society. Take the floor, Edmund.
Thank you very much. There's a concept that Christianity didn't come to change our tradition and customs, but Christianity comes to teach us about humanity. There's a fact in that angle. There's a fact that there's a mushrooming preachers of various Christian denominations, and sometimes they have their own personal interpretation of the Bible and the practice of Christianity. The same thing how politicians interpret constitutions and the values of the constitutions. That's that fact. We pack it somewhere. That's why I was saying in the beginning, if the community and the supporters of Honorable Salva Matoka have realized that the church is committing crimes against the traditional values and norms of the community, it is not the church as an institution. It's those people who run that institution. From the concept of adherence to rule of law, you can't take the law into your hand. All these arguments raised by this fellow, these are the arguments that you can go and open a court case without banning the church. Go to court, open a court case, say, look here, this church is doing 1, 2, 3, 4. And similar incident happened in Yambio, remember? One time there's a pastor in Yambio almost locked into prison. But legal process have to take place until he was freed. And you have to give his justification and his testimony. So why do you want to go and ban the church? While you have culture of rule of law, you have laws in existence, you have legal institutions in existence that you can go and open a court case against the church. And even if you don't want to go open a case against the church, you could have reported the practice of those religious leaders of the church in your community to their central body. Seventh-day Adventists have a central body. And the central body have a very good assets, very good institutions that people are following them. Nobody have problem with them. You can eat with them. It's their faith, it's their belief. If you don't like it, distance yourself. But if you're distancing yourself, you can't distance yourself by taking the law into your hand. You can't distance yourself by violating their rights of worship and the Constitution, Article 23 of the Bill of Rights and subsection A say we have the right of worship. What about the kujurs that people goes for? And even we believe that kujurs are now determining political leadership. Why are we not attacking them? Why are we not attacking the kujurs? And people are saying, walai kujurs ingito kebiru, filan kujurdo kebir, or filan kujurdo keda. So why are we not banning them? So the question is, when come to faith, you cannot determine for somebody a faith by being aggressive. This is completely terrorism, extremism. So there's no justification for the banning of the church. If whatever the church have done wrong, take a legal case, open a court case, investigate, let the law take its course, and let the law be applied. Religious people, yes, they are not completely clean. They're not above the law. You can't say they're always right in everything. Where is other people that we know, we call them prophets? Some of them have to run away from South Africa because they have the legal issues to answer in the court of law. But have the South African government banned their churches? We have a lot of issues even in South Sudan against religious leaders, but they've not banned their churches. But banning a church, it's completely a demonstration of a culture of not respecting the rule of law, not respecting human rights, not respecting constitutional governance. There's no justification, whatever the followers are. Now you chop ear of somebody because he's believing on another church. Who is that person? Is your sister. What implications have you done to the life of this particular girl? What have you inflicted as a trauma to the life of this girl? What about if she commits suicide? And if you believe that one day, one time, you're going to face trial, these are part of the sins that you're going to face it. Because we're not judged on anything, we're judged on our own deeds. Burning the church is crucifying Jesus if we're Christians. So it's a question of applying the rule of law. If the church have committed a mistake, why don't you go to court of law, open a court case, let the court take its course? And nobody will have a problem with you. But why do you go and take a fire and burn the church? That's completely wrong. So in terms of traditions, for example, in my culture, if I have my brother who I follow have died, I have not right to marry for him a wife because it's not part of my culture. But somebody's culture is saying so. I should respect it. I can't disown that. I can respect that. So if I'm doing something against that, you cannot take a gun and you come and shoot at me. You take me to court. And the values of your culture, because remember, it's clear in our constitution that our customs and traditions are primary foundation of the laws that exist. So if they violate the values of your culture and traditions, the court will punish them for that. And punishment through the court is a clean punishment that you have not shown any culture that I'm above the law, I'm a leader, and I can decide on everything. Because you can, this practice, we can decide on everything. Even maybe one day we can declare ourselves that also I'm a president, I'm going to put a flag in the same way of burning the church and start running in Juba with my own motorcade. So that is indisciplined behaviors. That's a completely indisciplined behaviors, lack of humanity, and lack of maturity. So I'd like to tell the colleague who raised it. And then there's other things that I want to share also. The use of images. You know, sometimes it's painful that you go the extreme way and use an image of somebody who goes the right way. So the use of image is something also, sometimes we need to really take responsibility of that. So this is my conclusion, that my answer is that the act of honorable is unlawful, is unaccepted. It's something that seriously we condemned, and we hope that the government can respond. And taking the law into your hand is not a good practice. It's a very bad practice. We have lost our colleagues because of these behaviors. Some of us have lost being as a nationalist within the country because of these behaviors. And these behaviors will not help us in building the state and the nation of South Sudan we want. Before I could conclude, I would like to just make a comment on the recent protocol of ABA in Khartoum. Whatever the case will be, ABA case must be in line with the protocol of 2004. Any arrangement outside the protocol of 2004 is meaningless. We can't believe on that. ABA have its own framework that Juba and Khartoum have to believe on. We can't subject the sons and daughters of ABA to suffer because we want to create a new approach. A new approach must be based on the protocol of 2004 under the CPA, because that's how ABA is. Because the context of ABA is changing from time to time and from one agreement to another. And always agreements are signed and they're disowned. And that is watering down the 2004 protocol. So for my take is that whatever resolutions towards the destination and the status of ABA must be based on the protocol of CPA of 2004. And the status that are defined in protocol of ABA for that Mesria and the Rizegat can be a host, a citizen that can be host in ABA, shouldn't be used as an instrument to pain or to inflict a pain in Twic and Ngok. That should not be there. So we need to make sure that at least the leadership in Juba should not compromise in selling out ABA. Whatever the case is, ABA program is based on 2004. And for colleagues who are Ngok Dinka, Twic is not an enemy. Don't cause any harm on Twic. And Twic don't cause any harm on Ngok Dinka. Those are the conclusions I want to do. Because this nation called the Republic of South Sudan, we can't build it by being aggressive. We can't build it by being bully. We can't build it by being dominant. We can't build it by saying always our way is the best, the other people in the way are not the best. We can't build it by believing that what we know is what others should know. This one can't make. a process for building 100 years. If we continue these behaviors, we lose the state of South Sudan. And South Sudan will split up and will end up, look at what's going on now in Sudan. Look at Darfur. Because of imposition and dominance, marginalization, we have lost Darfur. It's no longer one. Rizegat on their own, Zagawa on their own. So should we go that we want to define South Sudan ruled by tribes and ethnic grouping? What is the value when you look at the movies of the liberation? The blood of those who have lost, what is the value? Is the value to empower you to dominate others, to marginalize others, to oppress others? No, that's not the way. The way is that we must accept ourselves and we must peacefully coexist with the respect of human rights, rule of law, democratic transfer of power, and living together with the respect of our cultures, traditions, and our values that brought us as a different tribes and different ethnic group to constitute the state called the Republic of South Sudan. South Sudan will never, never be a state, a nation, if we don't stop oppression and marginalization of others. How small they are, let's not marginalize them. They contribute for the presence of this country called the Republic of South Sudan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Edmund Yakani, for that. To my brother, Igwe Mayom, many citizens, especially South Sudanese, may recognize the challenges that you mentioned that came along with the church. But what we disagree with is the process or the approach. There are many ways to approach such issues without putting fire on a house where these people gathered to communicate with their God. There are many ways you can approach people who are trying to destroy the existing culture, subject them to the rule of law, subject them to the community elders. And this has been our culture scene. Nobody has ever killed anybody for not listening to what you said. It is not right. You have your own perception, and that person might be having his or her own perception. But the only ground is to talk to each other. Tell them your perspective and let them tell you their perspective to why they do so. Through that, you will reach to the common ground where you can compromise, either to do away with the church, especially the Seventh-day Adventists, and move on as you used to be. Or if they don't agree, then you need to tell them this is a red line. If you move and intrude into our cultures, then you are messing up with the wrong things. They will also understand. Using the same Bible to convince them, they will get it right. They will get it right. But it's hard to take it and approach them with the anger and a certain sign of showing them that you are the only man after God. Then community will see us as a bad society. But to protect the image of your society, it is your sole responsibility as a citizen of that society. That's what people are saying. Up to this juncture, I'll give you Abraham Adit.
Yeah, we have one. Yeah, we have one question from Clubhouse.
All right. Edmund, before you give your last remark, we give chance to Clubhouse participants also to add their voice. And thank you so much, Abraham Adit, for connecting us with the Clubhouse. Because there was a question which was asked directly before in regard to the Clubhouse warriors. Thank you.
Yeah, so the question is coming from Bilkona. Bilkona, if you can hear me, you can open your mic and go ahead and speak.
Yes, I can hear you, yes.
Okay.
Okay, am I very clear?
Yeah, you are clear. Edmund, you guys can hear Bilkona?
Yeah, we can hear him, but let him try at least to be close to the mic.
Yeah. The mic, yeah. Let him try to be close to the mic. I can hear you, but it's very far.
am actually close to mine. It's just directly from the phone here.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. My question to Edmund, first of all, my name is Abiel. The members and the founding members of the political party, National Democratic Alliance. In August, we actually tried to register a political party so that we'll be able to start a process of working in South Sudan as a means of realizing the change that we see. Unfortunately, what we found out that the political party council has been shut down. Given that awareness, as a party, we have written countless letters appealing to the government to open the political party council, which is actually the gateway to democracy in South Sudan. And I don't know whether, as a part and parcel of this peace agreement that was actually signatory, are you guys aware of that? The party has been shut down. The political party has been shut down in Juba. That's the question. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Abiel, for being precise and straightforward to the question. We appreciate that. Mr. Edmund, that is the question from Abiel, is asking about the political party registration committee, whether it is existing or it has been shut down. And if it has been shut down, are you aware of it as the signatories to revitalize peace agreement and also as activists? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. Of course, this is really an area of, he is not the only one that have approached me with this question. Now he may be the 7th or the 8th new emerging political party over the issue of gaining recognition as a political establishment that emerging new. And of course, we like that in the sense of political plurality. We need to be so much multi-party system that we can argue and we can have a better products. So in terms of the political parties council, the political party council, it depends on the interest of who you are. They will tell you it is shut down. And personally, I went there and I know the members of the political party council that exist right now. They are down simply because they receive a warning that they are going to be reconstituted. They are no longer a legitimate body. Yes, in line of the provisions of the Revitalized Peace Agreement, with reforms to legislations and institutions, the political party council need to be reconstituted in line with the provisions of the peace agreement. That means their legitimacy is based on the reconstitution, where all the parties that are signing the agreement reach there. At the same time, also, the political party council have awarded some parties what you call operational license for 6 months. And this for me is contradictory. Who is that person who is awarding license? And when others goes like our brother and he's told that they shut down, we're not operating. But all others are getting license. That for me is a real big issue because this agreement is based on 3 main pillars. If you want to succeed in this agreement, some of these agreement provisions are very long. What are the 3 key pillars that I would like to say? 1, unification of the forces, the security and defense sector, because that's where our unity of the nation of South Sudan depends. You need to have a genuine unification of security and defense sector. That's 1 pillar. 2nd pillar is having a genuine and clean and transparent and non-threatening, free and fair constitutional making process. Number 3 is having clear legitimacy for political establishment to exercise their political ideology through an event which is a result of their presence called elections. And elections is a peaceful and honorable way of transferring power from one group to another or from one entity to another. These 3 milestones are very important. The other reforms will come and follow later. But there's a manipulation of these 3 processes. Being the unification of the security defense sector, there's huge manipulations. Being the process for the constitutional making process, there's manipulations. At least now, the constitutional making bill is being passed. And it's supposed to be either this week or next week, the presidents have to reconstitute the National Constitutional Review Commission so that the National Constitutional Review Commission take responsibility, but also see how politically the connections has been done in the agreement that you elections without having a constitution. So you need to have a constitution before you go for December 2024 elections. Now, you cannot go for elections if you don't have a political legitimacy. So the constitutional making process goes simultaneously together with the political establishment. So there's a sort of like a consensus among those parties that claim they're signing to the agreement. They want to control the political space for those who have not been signatories to the agreement, which is wrong, by the way. It's actually by itself a violation of the spirit of the agreement, because there are parties that doesn't want to talk on this issue of the political parties cancelled seriously, because they believe that they have gained a political ticket of existence as a political party under the provision of signing the agreement, being signatory. And that's why some of them go under the cover of the alliances. But there's somebody who does not believe on those political ideology of the signatories agreement, but they want to exist as a political player to demonstrate an optional political ideology for successful transitioning from the situation. So I want to tell my brother that yes, we are aware of that. We have been advocating for that, and I'm aware that next week in the agenda of the parliament, it is a political parties act, because remember, it's been disputed. And automatically the passage of the political acts requires the reconstituted political parties council. And we have been petitioning IGAD. Personally, we petitioned IGAD twice over this of the political parties council, because we believe that the political parties have to there. The only thing, when we put pressure on reconstitution of the political parties council, the response we got, and this response, I would like to tell my brother, and I hope that I will hear from him a response. He should take advantage of this. There's a by consensus. You know, the agreement says decision making is made under the spirit of the agreement by consensus at the presidency. So there were decisions by consensus in the presidency that legally we can use its interpretation to make other political parties to exist. On the 22nd October of this month, the presidency have instructed state governors, county commissioners, chief administrative areas to open political space without any form of restrictions. So for me, the decision of the presidency and the spirit of the agreement is through by consensus. So but the decision of the presidency by itself, it set a political decision that is binding as an option of provisional legal provision under the spirit of the agreement. So that's why the minister in the office of the president communicated. And last week I asked, we need that decision to be written. And that decision should be taken by also a presidential order so that it become, but they couldn't do it. But automatically the publicity of that particular decision, the minutes of that particular decision, give anybody who have a political establishment a chance to come out and say, I'm a political party and I need to exercise my political rights because I need to mobilize members. And in the mobilization of members, I should not be arrested or scared or threatened by national security because I need to sell out my political ideology to the citizens. Maybe they may prefer it as the best option through elections. They may vote me to transform the country. So for me, the decision of the presidency based on the resolution dated 22 October 2022, it's completely an opening of political space, which was directed to state governors who are the chairperson of security institutions, to county commissioners who are chairpersons of security at county level, to chief administrators. But unfortunately, this decision was violated. The IU have to detain SPLM members, I think in Pariang, until they were released yesterday. And because until when we shouted that, hey, but your leaders have made a decision. Why do you detain them? So, oh, it's not communicated to us. And no one does this excuse where you detain somebody, slap him 10 slaps, and you say, no, we have not received the communication, but already violated the what? The decision. So for me, for my brother, I want to hear from him what is his opinion. As political party council is not reconstituted, the instruction of the presidency dated, which I call it resolution of the presidency on political space, dated 22nd October 2022, have given anybody with any political establishment to come out public and speak out. That's my response.
Yeah,
I hope I can hear
you.
Edmund,
before you close the remark on that regard, I have these follow-up questions. Do you believe this could be another strategy of blocking the emerging political parties into political arena in the country? Or is it another strategy to frustrate the new forming political party by the mother SPLM? which is the ruling party now. Thank you, Edmund.
I'll answer in this way. First, it's a consensus of those who claim signatories to the agreement. They want to hijack the political space for themselves alone. Because those who claim that they are signatories to the agreement, they don't speak so much aggressively on the issues of the reconstitution of the political party council. Even there's no MP who raise a motion that, you know, they come to realize when comes election. So number one concept is those who are signatories to the agreement want to restrict the political space to belong to them alone. So they use, like, you know, we're signatories to the agreement, we need to have a political space to exercise our political rights. Now, if you're non-signatory to the agreement, they tell you, my friend, you're a newcomer. Les nouveaux should not have a chance of exercising. While it's a constitutional violation. Because there's no constitution that believes on the principle of good governance and democracy that control political establishment that are emerging, because that may be the successful political ideologies that are coming up. You remember this young boy who established his party, the African People's, I think, Congress Party, was established by young people, the way how he was scared and intimidated because it's a party of young people that is outspoken, and we have to come for the rescue until even they were detained. They were told that they didn't register. But what are you saying? That we are not a political party in existence, and the agreement have a clause that promotes political plurality, that promotes a non-violent way of transforming the situation of the country from the situation we're in now to a better situation. So we need political establishment. We are not running government with churches. We're running government with civil society. We're not running government with business community. We're running government with political parties. So people who have interest of fixing the government need to come into an identity of a political party. So your questions is in place. It is a control of the political space by the signatories to the revitalized peace agreement, but also it's a strategy of denying a new merging political ideology, because, to be honest, not only SPLM is that. All these guys that we call them, they merge out of the SPLM. It's a split. Split from SPLM red to now blue, from blue will go to yellow, from yellow will go to another one. They're all around the agreement. It's the same friends who are together in political one school. They created different colors. They are all of them, they're there. So the question is now, we need to check the political parties that are signatory to the agreement. They should open the political space. And that's why when you put pressure, and this is what I'll share with the audience, that the directives of the presidents to the state governors, to the county commissioners, to the administrators was a response when they hear that actually we're moving to East African Court of Justice, that actually political legitimacy of political players that form the government of South Sudan for us to be a member of East African community is not legitimate. That's why they responded by saying, okay, now, let us answer them. The best we can answer them, let's give instruction. State governors, county commissioners, chief administrators, open political space. Because there's so much demand that there's a restriction of political space. And that's simply because IO are in tension with SPLM in the way of how to organize their businesses. But that political space is not in written. That you can use it in a court of law to claim, like our brother was saying, he can't say now, there's this one here. But for me, where South Sudan is, the resolution of that meeting and the date of that meeting, for me, remain as a foundation of a legal argument, because it is the presidency. And the agreement says decision under the implementation agreement is done by consensus at the presidency level. Since presidents have already decided that political space should be open, and they have instructed the state governors, the county commissioners, and the chief administrators, anybody have a political substance should come out publicly and should exercise his political rights, because that's the foundation of the decision. And that's an alternative framework for political engagement. That's what I like to tell my brother, because in another way around, simply is an advanced rigging of elections.
Of course. Thank you, Edmund. Let me turn back to Abraham Adit. If my brother Abiel want to comment, then I give you 2 minutes before we close our show. Thank you.
Yeah, Abiel, go ahead. Abiel Kun. Okay, Abiel Kun, can you hear me? So you have 2 minutes to put in your last statement or a remark we have. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but my last question, the follow-up is that I just heard from Mr. Edmund that there was a resolution of the presidency that allowed a
Okay. Thank you, Abiel. So, Edmund, did you hear him? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Edmund, as you will respond to him, you will also put your last remarks, and then we will end our show. Thank you.
I do agree with him. Without legal license, your political legitimacy as a political entity to operate in the political space in a public arena is questionable. And that's why I'm saying the beginning we need to start using is the consensus of the presidency decision, because otherwise, as I tell him, is that we have petitioned several times the reconstitution of the Political Parties Council and the reconstitution of the National Election Commission and the Constitutional Review Commissions, because these are the things we're pushing. And I'm aware that next week in the agenda of the Parliament, the issue of the Political Party Act to be passed is on the agenda, and automatically will push also to make sure that the Political Party Council is registered. And anyway, it's the only way if you want to go for elections is for political parties to come and register legitimately. If 700, let them register. At the end of the day, it's the decision of the citizens with their vote, the way how the party says. So I do agree with you, my brother. I'd like to tell you that we'll keep on standing on this ground as I describe it. Is a control of political space by the party signing to the agreement, but at the same time is an advanced rigging of election if they continue not reconstituting the political parties council. That for me is a way of refusing good governance and democratic practices by the parties that are signing to the agreement, and which by itself is a violation of the agreement in terms of its spirit of why we have to sign an agreement for transitioning. My final conclusion is that the South Sudan we want cannot be built with a barrel of gun, cannot be built with hate speech, cannot be built with aggression, cannot be built with restriction of dialogue among people, cannot be built by making sure you give hard time for those who are expressing themselves. The South Sudan we want, we only build it when we all reach to the maturity, that constructive and productive dialogue among ourselves, without any restriction, without any form of violence, is the only way. There, we will build South Sudan. Remember one time, one person was asked by a Nigerian, how Dubai become a more developed than Nigeria? And he told the Nigerians have oil, they have everything. But Dubai, they don't have those resources. But because of good leadership, they are now where they are. Then the Nigerians have resources. So my answer is that whatever role you're doing, you're a leader. If you are writing on a Facebook page, your opinion, you're a leader. Be a right leader for a South Sudan that is not hating themselves, that is not promoting violence, that is not promoting oppression, that is not promoting marginalization as an instrument of assertiveness. You can't assert yourself. So I want to tell South Sudanese, wherever you are, if you're listening to me, we must fight these wrong practices, oppressing others, marginalizing others, respect of no human rights, no respect to rule of law, and you want to be dominant simply because you believe you are the right one, others are not the right one. How 2 or 3 the other people are, and your millions respect their rights, give them their constitutional right, let them enjoy like you, the millions. That's the South Sudan that we want. Without this, we'll continue in the social media, demand the South Sudan we want, and it will never happen until we change our political attitudes to an attitude that respects democracy and good governance principle. Thank you very much. Let God bless South Sudan, as our national anthem say.
Thank you so much, our guest, Edmund Yakani, for your last statement to all South Sudanese. We thank you on behalf of Lagos State Media Team. We thank you, our viewers, for tuning in and for also asking your questions and make our show interactive and lively. Thank you for that, and that's what we need. Once we invite any guest, we expect our viewers to throw in their questions and also seek for clarification. And we appreciate the Clubhouse team for also coming together to listen to our guest, Edmund Yakani, and also to pose some of the questions for him to clarify to us because he's on the ground. And to Edmund Yakani, we thank you so much as Lagos State Media Team for always finding time to come and talk to us and also update the public on what is happening on the ground. Somebody texted me before that what internet is Edmund using? Is it Juba, MTN internet, or somewhere? Let me respond to you, my brother. Edmund Yakani was yesterday in the country with the calendar of 2022, and he is now in a country of calendar 2014. In short, Edmund Yakani went back to visit 2014 to see how 2014 is doing in comparison with the 2021. We are ahead of Ethiopia in terms of calendar, and he is currently in Ethiopia. He went there to attend a certain important occasion, which Lagos State media will be obliged to appreciate him by tomorrow. Up to this juncture, Edmund Yakani, if you want to respond to somebody who was questioning your internet, then you can say something. Then we will end our show.
Thanks. I just arrived at Addis today on the event of receiving the awards given to me by AU, and I'll be back, of course. Here is still not safe, even if it is Juba. MTN is expensive, as you see whenever I'm in South Sudan, outside Juba is how it is. But this is the difference between when you commit yourself for a national building, where you really prioritize national interest. This is how beauty of personal national interest. But when you believe on violence and killing yourselves, that's how you face yourself. But still, we have the opportunity. The chance I've never missed before us. I'd like to inform everybody, South Sudan is the nearest future, will be best, and people talk about us like the way people talk positively about us, not negative about the current situation. Still, God will bless us and we'll be a rich country. I have a hope and I believe that whatever is happening, it will come to an end soon. It doesn't take long. So just be courage, be nationalist, stand for the nation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Edmund. Up to this juncture, allowed me to appreciate Lagos State Media Team, President Isaac, Tiang Paul, Deputy President Bolmakur, Information Minister Agar Dengmabok, and our able coordinator, Abra Madin Majak, for always standing strong and mobilize our guests and control the studio. May God be with you. May God bless South Sudan, and may God bless our viewers. Let's have hope. With the hope, everything is possible, and people live by hope. Be blessed.
It's your boy Young Love, I give him that time. Pancho legs stand and punchy America. Banyi doll, Pancho legs stand and punchy America. Banyi doll, walk on the lake, Kankara water no watching. Koga level leg, gear, bow, very leg. Panda with ya, punchy America. Panya doll, Chingatonga Pandon could you buy a check out. Paku Panda Jiro, what ya be doll venting. Stand up and cheat America, Banyi doll, Pancho leg stand up and cheat America, Banyi doll, walk on the lake, Kankara water no watching, Koga level leg, gear, bow, very leg, Panda with ya, Panchid America, Panya Dwalaman, Chingatonga Pandon, could you buy a check out, Paku Panda Jiro, what ya be?